Hello, YouTube. We posted a video on this just yesterday, and apparently someone didn't get the memo. Or he couldn't be bothered to watch it and at least listen to the arguments Ren provided. During our weekly discussion on what to cover, this came across the notifications from our friend Bill.
Kage-shinma, I can be wrong. It is you that cannot be wrong. Say in your head, I cannot prove there's no God, but I am so intelligent I can safely say there's no God. What's with gays and atheists having to come out of the closet? As soon as you tell everyone you are an atheist, they believe you are a demented fool because you are volunteering information better left unsaid. You gain nothing by telling people you don't believe in God. Although I understand, when you give information with no possible chance of gaining any advantage, then you aren't any smarter than a 10-year-old. Because I have faith in God, I have to tell people I believe. Whether you smart people think I'm stupid, dumb, ignorant, etc., really doesn't matter. If I am wrong, I will never know. If you're right, you will never know. I suppose you can hope you are right, but it is a simple, logical argument, in favor of God, not in favor of no God.
My presence here should suggest what we think of that particular pile of rotted fecal matter. Once again, the response we crafted for this so long as to be easily glazed over by your average God botherer. So here we are, for Creationist Canards 3, Part 2. Kage, Ren, Tabby and I drew straws to see who was going to do future responses to this particularly stubborn individual, loser take all. It's my contention that since Kage wrote the bulk of the script that he should get his ass on camera and deal with it. But the final argument was that not only am I in complete agreement with everything that was said herein, but I'm far cuter than he and his ugly, mangled-looking ass, and therefore much more likely to hold the attention of the audience, whether it includes Bill or not. The one and only time he's taken the stage himself was an unmitigated disaster, and we can't very well have that. With that out of the way, I give you a response to Bill's crap, and ask that you take as read that I couldn't have done any better with the wording than Kage has here. What you're about to hear represents all of the people that work on these videos, and I'm certain more than a few who do not. I was given the opportunity to read everything and edit it as I saw fit, and down towards the end did make a few changes to the original text to reflect the collective nature of the effort as a whole. This video should be roughly the same length as the last, and I recommend popcorn. There will be links to the thread in question and part 1 in the description. If you wish to investigate the details of our argument, then the argument itself should serve as the information you need to do that. Because if Bill somehow manages to accomplish even the first task on the list he's been given not once but twice by the end of this video, then we will certainly be checking his work. Feel free to check ours. In fact, I openly invite you to. If you find something wrong or less than reasonable, then call us out on it. An argument stands on its merits, and if the argument doesn't have any, we might as well have not bothered. Now, on with the punish. Somebody didn't watch the length video. That particular charge has already been answered. I can be wrong, certainly, and you were even given a roadmap with which to prove wrong every atheist that has ever lived. I withhold the belief in any deity due to a lack of evidence. I have never once claimed that there are no deities, nor that they are impossible by definition. I have in the past stated that existing models work just fine without the need to take deities into account, because they do. I take issue with the book from which the Abrahamics take the description of Allah Yahweh, but that's because the book itself is so full of known inaccuracies and a vast number of outright fabrications that it can be safely dismissed. Commandment 1 states that Allah Yahweh is a jealous God, and that there shall be no other gods before it. Okay, fine. I'll bite. My withholding belief in it or any other doesn't violate that commandment. Worshipping a book of fairy tales would, even if it is the word of your God and thus special pleading by definition. Or the assertion that Mr. Jesus, who himself appears to be a conglomeration of a dozen distinct people, all claiming to be the promised Messiah. There were a lot of those running about during that time, a historical fact that exists in a great many documents from all over the Roman Empire. There are even some existing in modern times. We cannot in any way establish a clear identity for this person in the writings of any historian of the era, including a number of chroniclers that would have been sympathetic to such a person. His hometown wouldn't be settled in any way until 70-ish CE, some 35 years after the date of crucifixion reported in exactly one place, the New Testament, which is accepted in any way by only the two religions that rose from Judaism, Christianity and Islam. The Quran echoes large portions of the New Testament before launching into its own shit later, and it takes the Old Testament as read. Muhammad was himself very surprised that the Jews didn't simply accept it, as like the Muslims, they were children of the book. All three religions use the covenant with Abraham to justify their claims on the Holy Land, including Christianity. If you wish to refute that last bit, I will refer you instead to the modern moratorium on Jews entering the Temple on the Mount, as well as a couple of 100 years starting back in the day called the Crusades. Those things are verifiable by all the parties involved, including those of Muslim scholars contemporary to the events in question. Of the Exodus, there are no records. In fact, the lack of records verifying any element of the story is significant in and of itself, as the larger culture involved, the Egyptians, was anal about keeping detailed records of every occurrence. There are detailed attendance and pay records for the building of every public building, for example, as well as regular rolls for the army. Nothing in these records indicates that any large part of the population disappeared overnight, nor was the loss of a pharaoh and an accompanying army recorded, and such things would have been noted. No single event in the New Testament can be verified, including that of the year of birth of the individual described. If you dig just a little, every element you see in the first 5 books of the Old Testament can be traced back to the other extant religions in the region. If you dig a lot more, you'll discover that there is no global flood event in the geological record. There are any number of local events that could have swamped large areas and given rise to such things. The world was a pretty small place for those people after all. Besides which, a flood event of that magnitude would have melted the planet on basic maths alone. A number of people have done those maths, and they just don't work. The fossil record can't support it either. We have a great many different ways to date rocks after their last good melting, and to say that the planet is a mere 6,000-ish years old is demonstrably false. That's your first paragraph. We'll get back to that later. As for the balance of your attack, telling me you were a rabid Christian and that I was an ignorant savage resulted more than 3,500 words being given over to correcting your misapprehension, and it looks like this is going to go just about as long. You provide an ad hominem attack where you should be trying to use the framework I gave you on a platinum platter to prove that I am incorrect in my current stance. Your suggestion that people should be dishonest about themselves is a problem in more ways than one, when you think about it. Because all you need to do is ask everyone you meet clearly if they believe in your God, and if the answer is no, then they've shared, on your demand, information that they shouldn't because it hurts your feelings. You based all manner of judgments about a person on nothing more than their agreement with your personal delusions. If they say yes, then they break Commandment 9, and as such are permanently untrustworthy. Nobody can ever have standing, because we all emerge without faith of any kind. You have to train people as children to take on blind faith that which demonstrably wrong. You must take advantage of their trust in you as a caregiver and authority figure to not lie to them. Besides which, if I told you that Thor, Freya and Amaterasu visit me on a regular basis, then you'd call me a nutcase, and rightfully so. You don't believe in them, and therefore they cannot exist. But if yours does, then you open the gates to the possibility of every god ever declared having existed. The majority of arch-conservative Christians demand equal time in the classroom for Allah Yahweh, but when another religion claims the same right and there are a number of older religions that could, they wave the bullshit flag. I do gain a clear advantage of revealing that I still require evidence of deities as a concept prior to acceptance in a conversation you escalated into its current state. It gives everyone watching it a clear idea on where I stand with respect to your claims, and thus when I lay out my argument, it will be accepted on its merits, rather than the blind acceptance of a book that was written by a group of Bronze Age desert-dwelling goat-botherers sitting around the campfire working out the best way to get wealth, fame, and a cushy office job with unlimited access to human women rather than having to make do with their livestock. Because you see, the difference between you and I here is that you've accepted that pile of demonstrably false fairy tales without questioning their veracity, whereas I was openly encouraged to question everything I was told as a child. I can take very nearly every claim that has ever been made by my parents, teachers, and every other member of society, and verify that there is repeatable experiment or detailed records of events that transpired from a number of sources. In the absence of evidence, I do not make claims for or against a particular thing, as there is simply no point in following the example of those cattle molesters I mentioned a moment ago. I say that I do not know, and will withhold any conclusions pending evidence for a specific conclusion. What that conclusion might be is of no consequence. What's important is that the argument for that conclusion be based in fact that can be checked by means of detailed record of experiment or observation that makes a falsifiable prediction and can be repeated. TikTok was a perfect example from the video. Your failure to pay attention to the link provided simply cements the failure of your argument. Watch the video, and respond to the argument, rather than assume that it is the ravings of a people with the mental capacity of your average preteen. For you, my colleagues and I are damned if we do, and damned if we don't. So why bother? You wrap up with yet another variant on Pascal's wager, and that's about as weak as it gets. When you lay out the basic diagram, there is a 1 in 4 chance of a positive outcome. Except that that's simply not the case. Most versions of nearly every religion with any level of organization demand that very bad things will happen to you if you don't toe their line, and their line only. There are some 40,000 individual sects of Christianity alone, several in Judaism, and at least a handful of Islamic sects, and that's just the Abrahamics. Then you have all manner of other religions worldwide, some of which are active amongst just a few people. Then every extinct religion atop that. They all have an equal chance of being right, as we cannot assign odds based on any evidence whatsoever, and the idea that they all runs contrary to the claims of every one of those varied sects. Your 1 in 4 chance just turned into 1 in millions if I'm being charitable. On top of that, I'm required to accept that I have no purpose except as a warm body giving my limited time and even more limited funding to people representing one or more creatures that return nothing but the comforting promise of a reward after I've made a dog's breakfast of the one life I know I have. Then when I get to the place I'm supposed to go afterwards, I'm told that I picked the wrong one, and a very bad thing happens to me, despite my sacrifices. No thanks. I'll use the ability to think that I received as my genetic legacy, and check claims made by all and sundry against the available evidence and my current model of reality. When proven wrong, I can easily make changes in my model of the universe and my place in it. My friends and I have been dealing with you for well over a week, and despite being pointed in the general direction of several mountains of viable evidence, and clear arguments on the points you raise, you are either unwilling or unable to stop and ask yourself why there are arguments against your position. If what you say is absolutely accurate, and what you've been taught by your book and the various pastors you've dealt with over the last 60+ years is absolutely true, then why is there no evidence to verify any of it? How is it that I'm still breathing, despite my refusal to accept your model of the universe, and the God you so revere? Surely, it could simply smite me if I'm out of line. Well, it should, because without the evidence and the framework that I laid out in the video you didn't watch, I won't just roll over and accept that sort of authority. I can't, by definition. It removes from me any agency for my own actions, and absolves me of responsibility for anything I have ever done, good or bad. That alone reduces me from a human being, with the ability to determine my own path based on my natural ability to reason, to the status of blind, crippled and loving dog, licking the boots of the master in the futile hope of a better tomorrow. Okay, maybe that's being a bit charitable, as the dog is a fairly positive creature that has its uses to the master beyond mere sacrifice, and does get a tangible reward for a job well done. More like a cow or sheep, whose sole purpose is to mark time and accept that life is beyond their control, and are entirely unaware of the fate that will befall them until it's far too late to do anything about it. If I cannot be responsible for myself and the people that depend on me directly, then of what value am I? Am I one more cow milked for whatever can be had before I'm led away to slaughter? Or can I make a difference in the lives of the people around me, give my children a shot at a better life, because I have the necessary tools to make rational decisions about what I do, and the knowledge that those decisions have an impact on the lives of others? Just because someone else can pay my debts for me does not absolve me of the fact that the debts were of my own making. The very concept espoused by religion is that I'm a weak thing, unable to think for myself and therefore must have the approval of another creature to be worthwhile. I cannot judge right from wrong without knowing this mysterious creature I cannot meet until after it's all over, and any sense of what is good and evil must come from a creature that routinely violates all manner of physical law in order to force the creatures he controls to end untold numbers of lives. Never mind that such a creature apparently rules in absentia, and has for thousands of years. You need to prove to me that your God exists. No special pleading, no simply quoting your book. Make a clear and unambiguous prediction, and then follow it up with a repeatable experiment that has a consistent result that can be duplicated at will. You must first prove that gods can exist, then using that as a base, prove that they do. You must thereafter prove that your specific God exists, and that he had anything to do with anything whatsoever. To do this, you're going to have to throw out your book, as it has been entirely discredited by modern scientific method. You must then establish that the things it has been credited with are novel, and that the posited version of reality is in accordance with current observation. Finally, you must develop your experiment, test it, publish it, and put it through the review process. Whether or not it can withstand scrutiny will depend entirely on whether or not your experiment can be repeated, and that it fits all the facts we have to hand and can as a consequence make a prediction of a future discovery or event that can only be explained by the existence and participation of your specific God. You made a positive claim, as clearly as those of Kent Hovind, Ken Ham, Casey Luskin, Michael B. Heath, Stephen Meyer and William Lane Craig. The burden of proof is on you, and until you provide extraordinary evidence of your claim, then I must continue to reserve judgment until it is provided. If you expect me to treat you as an adult, then you must act the part. Make a sound argument with evidence to back it, and you will have untold numbers of converts to your cause, as well as the admiration of every theist that ever lived. If you cannot, then admit it, and move on. If you will not, then say so, and your failure to even try will be noted, and you can live your life secure in the knowledge that when your faith was put to the question, that you turned tail and ran for the safety of your deity's apron strings. There is no shame in saying that you do not know something. In fact, it is the most academically honest answer you can give to most questions you will ever run into. Do gods exist? I have no idea, and I have no way to know with absolute certainty. Until it can be proven one way or the other, I remain as I am, without a firm conclusion and no way to build one. Based on what evidence there is to hand on both sides, the chances of there being something to the delusions of your average theist is so close to zero as to be nearly indistinguishable from it. But there is a definable non-zero probability that they do, and as such I can say that I do not know with 100% certainty that gods don't exist. When you made your very first claim, I asked for a source, which you provided, and I subsequently salvaged as a known fraud operating a snake oil sales racket that operates in defiance of existing science. It went downhill from there, and that has led us to where we are now. A discussion requires that the participants engage with the arguments offered, and make counter-arguments that support their case or refute that of the other parties. Like many of the creationists, flat earthers, geocentrists, conspiracy theorists and other similar individuals we do videos about, you refuse to engage with any argument whatsoever, preferring to stick your head in the rectum of whatever protective creature you look up to and wait for the challenge and the argument to go away. Except that it never will. It's going to sit on the internet and fester, a monument to your failure to stand up and take it on. Throughout the thread to date, and especially after the first video, people are snickering at the relative ease with which your claims were dismantled, examined with a microscope, and then tossed in the circular file where they belong. This time, I predict that there will be uproarious laughter. All you did was restate your original argument, and then launch into another attempt to discredit me with an overgeneralized straw man making an ad hominem attack. It will not stand. What you do next will determine the course of this debate going forward. Should you buckle down and attempt to address the points I've laid out for you, or gather the evidence to support the argument that we handed you the procedure for all wrapped up in pretty paper with a lovely pink bow on, then we can get down to brass tacks. If you choose to repeat your assertions without evidence, we will be doing this again. Next time, though, I won't be nearly so nice. Out of respect to you as a human being, I have avoided disparaging your religion directly. It is my hope that you will take that as a kindness. I'm going to leave you with a quote that I think is considerable relevance here, and I'm going to hope that you keep it in mind when formulating your response. Most of my regular audience will know this quote intimately, and I want you to take it to heart. I give you a Hitchens razor. That which is asserted without evidence can also be dismissed without evidence. Christopher Hitchens.